It depends. It really depends on where you are with probiotics, what derangements you have. I wouldn't take, so for instance, if somebody's got Sibo, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, I'm not going to be encouraging probiotics. The only proviso there is one of them, and that's called, there's a specific strain that I talk about, which is from Sweden, which is a Reuteri that suppresses things like C. diff and a whole lot of other pathogens. And I'll use it there. But ultimately, that's not going to fix it. At the end of the day, it's pretty much your stomach acidity isn't low enough to, and your gallbladder is probably not functioning properly. That's what really SIBO is all about, because the small intestine gets cleansed with bile. So if you don't have bile salt sufficient because your gallbladder is not functioning, you're not going to cleanse the actual small intestine. That's what bacterial overgrowth is. Not good enough, or you're not recycling bile. There's a whole lot of reasons for that. The other part is the stomach. Not enough stomach acid. Oops, more growth coming all the way up. So these are problems. I usually say fix those things if you've got those problems, and then we can look at probiotics and stuff like that. And I'm more interested, I don't really care about, like, the biggest ones, like the bifidobacteria, the firmicutes and stuff like that. They actually reside largely in our appendix. That's the old cecum. So I don't have a problem with that. If you suppress and then you get enough taurine, and taurine, I've done a video, keeps spermidine down, which pretty much means that you don't have too much growth. You want spermidine in the boys down there in the sacs. That's where you want spermidine. You do not want it in your gut growing bacteria. And the other thing, the taurine does, it also downregulates histamine. So it actually starts regulating and getting the gut to work properly, and then gets the gallbladder to work properly over time. These things then start resolving themselves. And, I'm more, where I usually prioritize is a lactobacillus. Most animal foods are very high in lactobacillus strains, the dairy ones, but even the meats and stuff like that, and like cured meats will be high in lactobacillus strains. And these are the stuff, we can get them from food. You don't need to buy probiotics. Now, you can use probiotics for a small period of time. It's a protocol that I talk about, which is 3 months on B vitamins, certain lactobacillus type broad spectrum, plus vitamin D at 10,000 IUs, in order, because the beneficial bacteria, surprise, surprise, also love to have some vitamin D. It helps them. And then they start exchanging and producing B vitamins. And then you don't want any more B vitamins, because your gut will be producing, you'll be getting them from the foods you eat, and everybody will be happy. Well, relatively kumbaya, as the thing goes. What's your experience?
With probiotics in general?
Yeah, in general, sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I found a lot of people would buy probiotics in the health food shop, and they didn't often come back to buy more. I think that either they didn't use them for long enough to have a strong enough effect, or that they didn't notice a benefit because they had so much else going wrong that they couldn't notice a benefit, because you can't just add more things in and think it's going to fix the problem.
Yep.
I think what point you made, which was really good, is sort out the other stuff first, then use that as a last minute, kind of like, oh, this is a protocol you can use. So
yeah, precisely. I mean, I know she's here, but and I do use her name constantly, but anyway, but she suffered, sort of diarrhea and stuff like that and whatever, and getting taurine and stuff like that helped improve the gut microbiome sort of stuff, doing some of these protocols and sorting out, suppressing the nasties in there and all that. But then she started getting a bit of constipation after that. And that was primarily because, she'd over years and years of glyphosate, which is a sort of low-grade antibiotic. Yes, there is a patent on that by Monsanto. It is definitely not something Harry Sopanos is saying, but it actually is recognized. So I think to a large extent, a lot of the gut issues can be at the foot of glyphosate, definitely. I think it needs to be taken out of the food supply, pretty much as far as I'm concerned. And it will decimate the lactobacillus. And so once you put some of the broad spectrum lactobacillus, which she put back in, that sort of sorted out her constipation. And then she could tolerate dairy. She could, everything was much better. And lactobacillus that have brought a lot of these strains are very much high in these products. But, commercial products, unless you're eating raw dairy products to get, like fermented dairy and stuff like that, you're not going to get enough of these strains to get the benefit. They tend to be more susceptible, so, if you're eating animal foods and you're maintaining good intake of them, you tend to have a better situation because the dominant ones are still going to be the bifidobacteria and the firmicutes types. And if you're eating more plant foods, the firmicutes actually increase, which tend to also cause a bit more inflammation by doing that. I do have videos talking about sort of how there is the myths and falsehoods of veganism, and there's a video there that covers that specifically. Talks about certain interleukins that get upregulated based on the shift in the gut microbiome, and it actually blows that whole argument that so-called fibrous foods are beneficial for the gut microbiome. No, they're not. That's bullshit on steroids. And the bifidobacteria actually increase with more animal foods, which are the ones that lower the inflammatory interleukins, inflammatory biomarkers. So these are the sort of what I call low-hanging fruit. Deal with that before you start even thinking about probiotics. And I think that's not only Jonathan's opinion, but also Bart's opinion as well. If you ask Bart, he sort of agrees with me on this completely. So, because he's had similar experience like me on these things, playing around and experimenting. And so you have to be honest when you experiment. And a lot of people don't because they're selling product or whatever. But if you're honest when you experiment with these things, you go, okay, this isn't working. And then you sort of work out the reasons why.